24, Driving Business.
Hello, how you doing? And welcome to the POLICON. I'm Anju Bariji, and definitely here we discuss matters to do with politics and how they can actually influence the economics of a given platform, of a given geographical country or any other area. Politics plays a very important role. And well, today, the point of discussion is going to be largely relying on the regional integration. I mean, we've talked about the East African community for quite some time, the East African regional integration and all this. But you see, when you discuss with experts, they will tell you that as much as we are talking about the advantages that are associated with this integration, there are quite more to discuss about what has hindered the implementation of us feeling what really an integration is. Because so many times we talk about an integration, but have we ever asked ourselves, or have we ever imagined what an integration feels like of a given region? Well, my guest today is John Walabiechi. He's a consultant at RCM and is going to be driving us through this particular discussion as we are going to be taking a look at how regional integration can boost businesses within. Mr. John, you're welcome on the show. How are you doing?
Thank you, Andrew.
Yes.
I'm doing very well, thank you.
That's very perfect. And you see, this is a topic that it's not the first time, and some people I think are tired to hear about this because, implementation and all that. But before we go into any other discussion in relation to this, give us a picture of what an integration is like as we can benchmark from other integrations around the world.
Thank you, Andrew. And hello to the listeners and the viewers. To me, integration must be people-driven. You cannot talk about integration if people are not free to move from one country to another. We have restrictions, we have border restrictions. A real integration must be people-driven. People must be able to settle in any part of the region as they wish. But that's impossible right now. Anybody who needs to work in any of the East African countries needs a work permit. Yes, in some countries we've taken away the charges, but you still have to go through the process of getting a work permit. So the integration should be about the people, not about business, because it's the people who bring the business. It's not, businesses are there for people. It's not that people are there for business.
Exactly.
Okay? So when you benchmark with other countries, say the EU, that's why you find there's freedom of labor.
Exactly.
Best example is footballers can play anywhere they wish, as long as they are an EU citizen, and there will be no work permit issues. But if you're an African player to play in the EU or any of the countries, you still need a work permit. Okay? An everyday person in any European countries can choose which country he wants to live in, go buy a house and settle. But these are things which are yet to be done in countries such as ours. So if you're talking about regional integration and we haven't dealt with the freedom of movement of people to settle anywhere, then it will be very difficult. If people can't move, businesses can't move.
Businesses can't move. And actually that brings me to a point of there seem to be lots of hindrances. We talk about the benefits that are yet to come, but the ultimate question is, why has this delay? Why are we seeing this delay in feeling this integration in the East African region?
I think there are very big issues in terms of what is stopping this integration. There are governance issues across the region. There is political conflict across the region. Look at the DRC. South Sudan is quiet now, but anytime things can flare up. So those are the big overarching issues, the governance issues, Obviously, we have different outlooks on how we govern ourselves, number one. Some countries have managed to change their governance structures every so often. Others are still on the way towards that, or maybe there's a plan, or maybe there's no plan. But in terms of the real issues that we look at, the physical issues that everybody can feel, the region lacks infrastructure.
Infrastructure, true.
It's a big issue.
You talked about something about what happens on the border trade, on the border, and
Yes,
we're having a discussion.
Anybody who has visited one of the major entry routes into Uganda, Malaba or Busia, will have seen the lengthy traffic queues by the trailers or the trucks, as long as 10 to 15 kilometers. There's a time when I was visiting the border and crossing into Kenya, I actually, measured on my odometer on the car to see how long this queue is. And what people don't realize is that is money. Money is stuck there
exactly.
for a few days before each and every truck is painstakingly cleared. Okay? He has to go through the process on one side, go to the other side and do it. And the people who pay for that is you and me.
Exactly,
the consumer on the ground. So these are things that the policymakers must look at. Do we really need all the paperwork, all the bureaucracy that one experiences at the border? It doesn't really make sense to me, particularly because there's money sitting there. Things are getting spoiled. And the drivers who are waiting in line become a social issue. We have, because they are sitting there doing nothing.
Nothing, exactly.
One, the businesses have to pay for their stay and their upkeep. They're idle. All they're waiting for is to drive the truck. So they're going to create social problems in the area, be it substance use or unwanted pregnancies, whatever it is, but they become an issue. And now it becomes a cost in the long run to all of us. Okay? Yes, the borders now look much better, one-stop center for the individual, because you went from one window, one immigration officer.
Immigration officer, yeah.
From Uganda, the next window is the Kenyan. So why can't we do that for the goods that are entering in the country?
Entering the country.
Yes. So that's one physical example you can find at any of the border entry points in the region that tells you that integration is still a long way off before we can actually achieve it.
Okay. Because now, when I try to look still into this matter, there is this aspect, I believe, of the private sector. I mean, each country, Sudan has a private sector, Uganda, Kenya, and so many. Why are these sectors not influential enough to push for fairer policies? Because, for example, recently we had an issue of a farm, a dairy plant that laid off workers because its produce was stopped. And probably it shows you that part of the money it gets to pay the staff is coming from the exports. They export the milk. I forgot the name of that platform. It was laid off the workers. All that. It's not in the probably by the time it was doing this, meaning there was an understanding with the dealers they deal with that side. But now the government comes in here and blocks in that. Now, because border hindrances has been one of the key hindrances to that regional integration. Now, my question is, these private sectors don't seem to be efficient enough to push for these policies. Yet to me, I feel there could be one source of hope for this integration.
Yes.
What do you have to say about that?
I mean, that's a great question, because the private sector, particularly the theme of the East African Business Council Summit that is to be held in Uganda at the end of this month, beginning of September, is to promote private sector. The theme is promoting private sector driven
economy.
Private sector driven for regional integration
For regional
to promote increased intra-African trade and investment.
Investment. Perfect.
So that summit is going to look at the issues that are affecting the private sector. And the issues that are affecting the private sector in this region are many. The cost of capital is so high.
In what circumstances? We can clear...
For example, if anyone who's going to borrow money in Uganda is going to get rates of 20 plus. That is just difficult for any business to sustain. Okay? Now, the taxes that every company has to face is also another issue. We're not saying nobody should pay taxes, but the policy seems to hinder the growth that we need. Okay? Take, for example, in Uganda, the upper rate for anybody earning more than 10 million, you're being charged, you pay tax at 40%.
Okay.
The other East African countries is 30%. Now, that 10%, the additional 10% compared to other countries of the individuals, such as those who earn such money, has taken away disposable income that would have been spent on consumer goods.
Yes.
Okay? So we're looking at tax policy. We're looking at cost of capital. Okay? The infrastructure is just not there. Okay? So, and at the same time, the indigenous private sector, you would be hard pressed to find anybody who is benefiting from the same incentives that a foreign investment might
Now that is
get.
also another
and
issue.
yet we really need to nurture the indigenous private sector. So the policymakers must look at all those issues affecting the private sector. Okay? And it starts with even the manpower of the country. Okay? It's not just private sector. Even the people coming out of the educational institutions must be the right fit. So it's much bigger than, it's we can talk about obstacles to the private sector quite a lot.
Quite a lot.
Governance within the private sector itself is an issue. Okay, we've seen big businesses in Uganda, family businesses. Once the principal goes away, then the whole business collapses. So we're taking 2 steps forward and 1 step back. So it really is a struggle for business in this region, particularly indigenous private sector, to thrive in those circumstances.
Okay. Now, taking a look at the foreign direct investments within the region, I believe each country has, of course, a policy in regards to foreigners investing into the country. But now, if we are to look at it from the joint perspective, are they not something that we can rely on because with integration, it comes with the aspects of financing, because you need to have various institutes, when they're uniting together, that means more capital. But of course, when united, it's much more easy. But now let's take a look at these foreign direct investments. Of what impact have they been? Or they have been also another hindrance for us to integrate as the East African region.
Okay, one thing that you have with foreign direct investment is that they bring in know-how, they create employment, and so they've been good.
Yeah, they've been good.
To a point.
Yes.
Okay? Look at the telecoms industry, all those, that's foreign direct investment.
Foreign direct investment.
And they're paying the taxes, no doubt about it.
Yeah.
Okay? Of course, the issue now comes in that once they've established themselves, how much are they contributing? How much are they taking out of the economy, and so on and so forth? Look, if I was to invest in a country, I should be allowed to take out what I've made. So
exactly.
To me, that is fair. But I think some of the things we've given them have given them such huge advantages over the local investor, such that local investor can't compete anymore because the person you're competing with has been given a certain leg up. to proceed with business, and he's been given incentives, tax exemptions, whereas you have to keep paying the same. Okay? Yes, we want foreign investors to come, so we need to also look at the other side of it. How much are we giving away to the detriment of our local investors?
Very interesting. Yes, you're still watching the Polycon. I'm with, of course, John Walabiechi. He's a consultant at RSCM, and we're discussing matters in relation to how the regional integration is going to boost the businesses within the countries of East Africa. And you see, on your point, there was a discussion, I think, last week about we as East African nations, we are selling away our tax rights because each country is trying to find ways of attracting these investors. For example, in Kenya right now, it's a little bit unstable because of what is happening, politics and all that related. And of course, when the investors find such a climate unattractive, they're going to think of, oh, let me go to Tanzania. Now, because Kenya also doesn't want to lose them, it's going to say, no, let's do this. They're going to make a fairer policy for them to invest in their unstable condition. And now even Tanzania wants them, Uganda the same, and to some extent, we've sold away our taxing rights. How is that going to affect our integration?
I mean, you see, each country has its own issues that they have to deal with.
Yeah.
Different laws. So, for example, I understand the land laws say in Tanzania are far different from.
Yes.
There's no freehold in Tanzania. The land belongs to all of us.
Exactly.
And we only lease it to you for a while. And once you're done with it, we might take it back if we need a road. Whereas in the other two countries, there's freehold and so on and so forth. So you have situations whereby each country has its peculiarities in how it deals with
for investors?
Foreign investors.
Yeah.
Okay? Now, you earlier said that every country will try and
to attract
them.
Exactly.
Okay? Now, we're doing everything we can to attract them, to keep them. What is that telling you? It's telling you that the foreign direct investor has a bigger say in policy.
In policy or formulation?
Than the local.
Okay.
Than the local.
Than the local investor.
Okay. Remember, you're saying why can't we get a private sector big enough to
influence?
And that's what we have the things that stop us from developing that critical mass to be influential. But then we're doing everything we can to attract the foreign direct investors, and maybe forgetting the pool of investors that we have. So you find that policy is there to help the foreign direct investor to the detriment sometimes of the country at large, because we are seeing certain advantages that they bring to the country, and because we need that capital investment. Okay? Look at the oil and gas. We can't do it, so we have to bring in the foreign direct investors to do so. Okay? And you'll find that the tax policy, the other incentives that have been made available to them is because that is what they asked for. So what we really need to do, if we're to make a difference as private sector, is to organize ourselves and to be very clear as to what we need to be tackled in order for us to make the right steps. And this summit that is going to be held, the East Africa Business Council Summit, hopefully, and I'm encouraging all the business people to attend it, because this is for us, it's for the business people in the region, so that we can forge ways in which we can interact with government and perhaps influence policy on that platform to make sure that we get what we want, and that's very crucial for everybody.
As we are working towards this integration, I know we benchmark we can't work without development partners in this particular aspect. Have we taken an initiative to spot out, this could be countries away from Africa, have we taken time to spot out those possible development partners we can actually work with to act as, just in case of some sort of unforeseen circumstances for the region?
You see,
it could be private companies from other countries.
The development partners would, in other words, donors.
Could we say donors?
Okay. I think in that respect, as you've seen with the current geopolitical repositioning, if we call it that, many countries are positioning themselves with certain countries. You'll find that East Africa today is leaning towards China
and Russia
for the infrastructure, which we said is a hindrance to integration.
Exactly.
Okay? Now, time will only tell whether the partnerships will have borne fruit. But one good example is the Kampala Expressway.
Yes.
Okay? Even within our own organization at RSM, Eastern Africa, when our partners, when we would talk about them coming to Uganda, they would shake their heads and say that road from Entebbe to Kampala,
exactly,
we can't handle it. Let's have the meeting in Nairobi. Just that road. But now the expressway is a good example, whereby now you're in Kampala in 20-25 minutes.
You're already in Entebbe.
You know?
You can easily,
Exactly. So now it is just a simple thing like that has made it easy for people to actually
come to you,
Because before you really spent a long time on that, on the old Entebbe road, and you
jam and
everything, and so on and so forth. So, but we've done that with the partnership of China. Okay. So the development partners, as of now, the region has leaned towards China. You'll see the same in Tanzania, you'll see the same in Kenya. So many of these capitals have been over the last few years, been huge construction sites to develop that infrastructure, which is needed to alleviate some of the problems of the integration.
Okay.
And now we're talking about one of the big things that has been talked about is the standard gauge railway.
Standard gauge, yes.
That's a massive.
And
that will change the game for East Africa. We've tried to partner with other development partners, but as you know, our own internal issues, perhaps assumed, meant that we were unable to proceed, because you found that people compared the cost of the standard gauge railway in one country, and for some magical reason, once it crossed into maybe Uganda, the costs escalated. And that's not going to work for a development partner, because he has to him he sees it as one project. But our own issues mean that everybody wants a say or a stake in the whole project, and therefore different aspects of the discussion will affect the completion of such a project.
Very interesting. You're still watching the Polycon. I'm Andrew Barija with my guest, John Walabiechi. He's a consultant at RSM. And the topic here is about how regional integration is going to boost business and enhance economic development. But of course, as you've heard the points really being put out there, it's quite very insightful. But of course, at this very point, we are going to get into the break. And when we return, we shall actually start from where we just stopped.
24.